And good morning, everyone. Do a sound check with Jason. Good to go. And for our editors, please start the recording now. Welcome, everybody. I see people are still joining the session. My name is Scott Hamilton. Welcome to the next in our reInvent HR series. And I see participants coming in from globally, actually. We see a heavy San Diego presence coming in via our Zoom channel, as well as YouTube. And we also have people streaming in from LinkedIn. So quite a good crowd today, including people from Mexico, Canada, and a few other sites. Again, welcome to the session. I'm going to get right to it. This is a very fast-paced, interactive session. And let me just tell you what we can expect in this very short hour and 15 minutes this morning, actually hour and a half. These are 8-minute Spark Talks. This is a very unique kind of formula we've come up with over the years that includes some audience collaboration. So on your Zoom function at the top, you'll see a Q&A function. You'll also see a chat function. Please use that during the course of this session. Our objective here is to develop next practices for you and your organizations based on what's going on in the outside world. And as we know, it's changing fast. And so we have to change fast. So we've assembled the top speakers here to join you this morning and share with you their experiences and their strategies for what's making them successful in today's fast-paced markets. Again, all of these people are top experts. Any one of these folks could carry this entire session, as you know, but we've asked them to do the impossible and get their remarks down to 7 or 8 minutes for your benefit. So you're going to get all punchlines today and then leave time for your questions and answers. I want to particularly thank our sponsors this morning, Acentus, who's one of our running sponsors for this reInvent HR series. Thank you so much for your entire team for supporting us. And Fitzgerald & Law, also thank you for being here with us on a global basis as well as locally here in San Diego. And last but certainly not least, Miller Farm Media, which is our production director and support team. Thank you, Jason Duncan and his team, for all you do in terms of making these events run so smoothly. I also want to thank San Diego HR Forum, HR Cafe, and SHRM, San Diego County, for their support in helping get people to this event this morning. All right, let's get started. We are the host, Executive Next Practice Institute. We're coming to you live from the University of California, Irvine, something called Buell Applied Innovation. When we get back to meeting again in person, as you see in the picture on the right, when we met last in March, we'll look forward to seeing you at our conference center here in Irvine. This is number 414 forums and workshops that we've done over the years for the C-suite and top leadership teams. That's 10 years worth of forums, a global audience surpassing 85,000 participants now. So we invite you to join us on a regular basis. Here's what you can expect in joining these sessions. Number one, learn about specific innovation strategies for growth. Secondly, you're going to hear from both startups as well as large market enterprise leaders and other thought influencers. You're going to meet key members of the Southern California business community, as well as the global innovation ecosystem. So many of you probably joined us in October 8th, where we had assembled all the top global innovation leaders across the world to talk about what's happening. Finally, you can develop your internal innovation capability, as well as how you reach externally to develop new innovation strategies. And that's never been more important than right now in getting that done. Couple of quick announcements. Coming up, November 12th, our 5th annual Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Forum. Here you see some of the top speakers in the DEI space. They'll talk about how to integrate DEI to your strategy, not making something separate, not make it a program, but make it part of the way you do business. I know you'll look forward to that one. Also, please save the date, December 15th at 12 noon Pacific time. We're going to do a mock virtual strategy offsite. We're literally going to pull together an executive team so you can go through with them live about recrafting their business strategy in a virtual environment. Really a unique kind of event. I know you'll enjoy that. Again, that's noon Pacific time on December 15th. There's the way you can connect with us at E&P and reInvent HR. Our URL you came in through today. Subscribe to our TV. And by the way, this show will be recorded. And finally, join us as a member. If you join as a member, this goes through January of 2022. January of 2022, if you join us now as a member. That includes all sessions. All right, what's our current environment? Here it is. We're operating in a virtual fog. And literally in Southern California, we were operating in smoke this week. But this fog is contributing to misalignment, lack of engagement with our customers and our internal teams often, a lack of focus, and finally, poor execution. You're feeling it as both a consumer as well as an internal employee, perhaps. We were doing fine in March, April, May, and then things started to fall apart. Now we've got this opportunity to get things back on track, start to get used to operating in these work from home and hybrid environments that we're operating in. Here's what we suggest. Go back to your core business value proposition. This is the business value proposition map. At the core of it is your value proposition as an organization is what problem do we solve and how do we solve it? What problem do we solve and how do we solve it? That's the core value proposition that makes the organization run, whether you're profit, nonprofit, private, public, I don't care. These are the questions you need to be asking yourself now. That's from a business perspective. As we look at this, virtually everything external to us is changing at a rapid change of pace, not just regulatory, but also economic trends, socioeconomic trends, the economy. Our industry domains are changing. All of these are impacting our business model. So that means for us, for HR, and to quote our good friend, David Urich, who talks about the HR value proposition, this means we've got to restructure that HR value proposition in a holistic way against what this external environment is doing to us. All right. That means for us is taking a blue ocean approach to the HR function and the business function itself, getting up, looking at what we can eliminate, what we can create, what we can reduce, what we can raise, going through those exercises of completely revamping how we do talent management, how we look at comp and benefits, how we interface with our C-suite teams. That's all got to change. In the past, we used to do this live in person. We take people off site. We do these strategy sessions. We might have an HR team meeting once a month, those types of things. In this environment now, we've got to take different approaches. We've got to leverage technology so that we can do this in a virtual environment to come up with our strategies together, real time, to move our organizations forward. And in many ways, this makes things easier, but we have to use the right tools in order to get it done. All right. So let's move on with our thought leaders today. Again, can't wait to get to these folks. We're right on time, and I look forward to all their comments. Again, at the close of this, we're going to do a deep dive with you on your questions and answers about what these thought leaders are covering today in terms of the HR value proposition and beyond. I first want to bring up Mark Wilbur. Mark Wilbur is president of Employers Group and Everything HR. Mark is a good friend, long-term supporter of Executive Next Practice Institute. He was the Associate Dean of Marshall School of Business and University of Southern California. He's been a partner with Anderson, and he is a wealth of knowledge, and their organization is a partner with E&P, and he'll talk a little bit about that. Mark is going to kick us off today to give us context for what is going on in the marketplace today. Mark, welcome. Glad to have you with us.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Coming through.
All right, fantastic. So, I really appreciate you letting me kick this off. As you know, our organizations deal with, thousands of companies every single year. And so we kind of feel like we're in the trenches on the front lines of dealing with what is critical and impacting these companies. There's no question about it. This last year, it feels like 52 card pickup. From a lot of perspectives. Just giving an idea, Zoom's stock price in January was $73 a share and not really moving very much. And now it's over 488 this morning. So, there's a lot of things that have changed in the last several months. It was only going to be 3 weeks, right? Only 2 to 3 weeks. We're now into 8 months. It's unprecedented times. And the thing about the 8 months that's so critical is that these are going to create some systemic changes in behavior patterns for consumers, for businesses, for people in their practices. And guess what that means? That means a broadside impact to HR departments in literally every single industry that there is. So I tried to boil it down to 8 very specific areas that impact employers the most for HR that they need to focus on going into 2021. Because I think this is important for people to really get their heads around as they approach the new year, especially, if they continue the lockdown. I mean, this is still a debate even in the presidential campaign as to how it should be handled. So we don't really know what's heading towards us, but if it continues on in any way, shape, or form as it has, it's going to have a pretty big broadside. So let me just get started here right away, because I got just a matter of minutes, right? Here we go. So number 1 is completely rethinking your organizational communication. I mean, the ad hoc water cooler discussions, the sidebars after a meeting, all these things that really have become very customary, very normal in operations are gone. All that stuff in many cases has completely changed. Phone call meetings, conference calls, Zoom meetings, all of these things have replaced what would be obviously in many circumstances very normal meetings that you'd walk over to somebody's office and sit down for 20 minutes and work something out. That has been tossed, and it really makes it very difficult. But it's not just there. There's also organizational changes as it relates to, from the communication standpoint, relating to your vendors and deliveries and how you manage between offices. Today our company had to organize somebody going over and opening up the office so that we could have a special delivery arrive versus it being turned away. So these are big issues. As we head into that will lead us into, as Scott brought up, engagement. Now, employee engagement has been a hot topic. As we all know, Gallup does their annual poll related to this, and they track that. But this has been I think, finally an underscore and enhancement to what has, I think, kind of become a boring subject area around employee engagement, because it's way beyond that now. You now have to actually figure out how to measure it. It's one thing to say day in and day out, oh, you need to improve employee engagement. What does that mean? And how are you going to measure it? As an executive, I can tell you the most important thing about these kind of initiatives in an organization is making sure you can measure it. And how would you know from this year to the next year that you've actually improved it? So one of the things, some people will do employee opinion surveys and then they won't do anything with them. And that brings me to the other part of the point in this one, and that's taking action. Don't measure things that you're not going to take action with. Don't ask people what they think should be improved if you're not going to do anything about it, because that can actually lead to a bigger problem called disengagement. And in today's world where you can't have an eye over somebody working in a cube, disengagement can actually disenfranchise people and them leading to disloyalty and other bad behaviors. So measuring employee engagement is really the critical aspect here, not just employee engagement, but actually how do you measure it and then taking action on it. 3, that leads into the whole talent management processes and procedures.
Oh, wait, Mark, sorry about that, but at least on my end, I'm not seeing your slides. We may have to.
You're not seeing the slide?
No, it may be just for me, but just double check if you would.
Okay.
Thanks.
You there?
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing it here. And it says share, no? All right,
Jason,
let me try again.
Jason, you want to pop in and see if...
Here, let me try again. Hang on. We got this. Oh, it disconnected. I see. All right, we got it. We are there, and how's that?
No, we're still not seeing it for some reason. It's really weird.
It is really weird. Okay, let's try this again. Sharing.
Here we go.
There we go. It's coming in now. Hey,
Okay.
There you go.
And then,
Are we good?
Perfect. Great job.
Good.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, it disconnected for some reason. So it was looking like it was sharing on my end. So anyway, that leads me to the third point here, and that is, now I got to get you guys off my screen now so I can actually see what I'm doing. So the third point is talent management processes, and the talent management processes and procedures have also dramatically changed in this area. You have changed expectations for employees. Now think about this, you know, the essential businesses have worked through a lot of these, and you can see in front of you with these essential businesses, all of these talent processes in place, all the employee safety procedures, how they're handling them, hiring, firing, a lot of that has been worked through, but a lot of it has not. And in fact, the regulations have been continually coming out from the state that has been impacting this severely. So this is a big area that people need to get around and understand what these procedures and processes are. Like, how are you going to measure people that are working remotely now? How are you going to measure dealing with people from a sales standpoint and performance standpoint? You know, are you going to track, are you going to put their phone calls into your system so you can track number of phone calls? I mean, how are you going to do this? And then how are you going to incentivize these people in the process? How are you going to deal with terminations? I mean, if we all got to have masks and separation, how do you deal with exits? How does somebody even return their card key to get into the building? You know, there's a whole bunch of issues associated here. And then you get into the recruiting, hiring, and then ultimately the retention and holding on to people. That brings processes and procedures under a very big spotlight, because the day-to-day where they would show up at the headquarters, go through their day of interviews, that is gone to a great extent. And a lot of people are doing Zoom interviews. There's all sorts of violations going on right now related to that. If you were to take the current existing laws that exist, some of the violations that occur in those online recruiting meetings are very interesting and really put a company at risk. But what are they going to do? Because the laws and the regulations haven't caught up to what we're trying to deal with today. I'm not saying the company is like purposely doing something wrong. What I'm saying is that there's a gap between laws and regulations and procedures that have existed for a long time that have now changed. This leads me to the whole employment law compliance and management area. This is where we live. I mean, you know, Employers Group and everything HR, we help clients deal with this kind of stuff on a daily basis. You know, where's the lunchroom and break room? Now, keep in mind, meals and breaks laws haven't changed at all. The requirements in those areas haven't changed. But how are you going to manage that, somebody working from home? Is it going to be a he said, she said thing where, you know, oh no, I said I took my, and then you end up with a, you know, a large case on your hands where somebody's suing you saying you didn't allow them to have breaks, when in fact, how you can't even see them and mandate that they take their breaks. Very difficult to deal with that. You add on to that, on top of that, the AB5 stuff with the 1099 issues, OFCCP, which has to do with diversity and fair hiring practices, and around pay equity, discriminating protections. There's so much going on here, especially in the COVID-19 area. Just having a different jurisdiction can completely blow this up. Compensation and benefits planning, your pay structure and benefits are changing, your incentives, your employee exceptions are severely altered. Your whole comp and benefit programs have completely changed now. What do your offer packages look like? Are you going to let people work at home? And then you get into this whole area. How do I get promoted now? I'm sitting at home and I'm trying to do my job. Is anybody going to even notice what I'm doing? That's a huge area and a huge issue. And that leads to this whole remote paranoia everything, which a lot of companies are dealing with now. They don't really talk about it a lot, but this is a big issue because people feel like they're getting passed over on projects or efforts because, you know, somebody didn't remember my name or doesn't remember, you know, who I am in the organization. So the whole corporate culture has been blown up in a lot of these organizations. Again, these are all smack in HR's lap. These are all things that HR has to deal with because this is where conflicts come. This is where issues come. This is where trying to manage through these issues is very difficult. You get into whole diversity, inclusion, equity, and all these fairness issues. And let me just tell you, the rumor mill is alive and well. So if you're an HR department, you better be listening, and hopefully your network has some level of value so you can take some action. Digital HR and big data. I'm just going to be really short on this. I think everybody understands that this is a big area. This is where everything is moving to, but there are a lot of landmines here, especially legal and compliance issues related to big data. It might be really awesome to be able to track big data and, and deal with your clients and your customers for that. But you got to be very careful in what you keep, track, and leverage as far as your employees go. These issues around access, usage, and security issues for employee records and their history and their background and what they do in their off hours is significantly at play in the courts. And if you make a mistake here, it can cost you a lot. 8, and the last one, strategic alignment of the organization. Scott will love this one. Scott's one of the foremost authorities in aligning organizations. But it's true, with the whole COVID-19 issue, because of all these changes that I've just discussed in the 1 through 7, you've got this issue around these organizations where the alignment is completely askew. There's whole groups and teams that are completely misaligned now because of the communication processes that have been thrown on their head. So this is an area for HR to be extremely proactive in. People for years come to me and have me come in and say, "Hey, how do I get to the C-suite? How do I become more influential?" Well, you know what? You've got to find your HR voice. You've got to become an HR leader. You've got to get out in front of this thing, even in this remote world. So I really encourage you to do that. And then Scott, I'll leave it to you and then I'll share back the screen and we should be good to go.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Mark. And I want to make mention that Employers Group has their WeLu coming up, the workplace employment law sessions coming up. And again, at post-event, by the way, you'll get information on that to our audience. Thanks again, Mark, for joining us this morning.
You bet. Thanks, Scott. Sorry for the initial share issue. I think that's funny because you talked about it, and then of course my computer foils me.
Yeah, it's the Zoom environment. We're used to it. Thanks again. Stick around. We'll talk to you shortly. Again, we gave Mark a little bit of leeway there because we want to set context, and that was an excellent way to do it. Now I want to bring up Kiki Stenard, partner with Fitzgerald and Law. Fitzgerald and Law is one of our great supporters over the years, and we want to thank you for coming back in, Kiki. Kiki is a partner with F&L, providing support to business expanding into the UK and beyond with tax, HR, payroll, employee benefits, accounting, and company secretarial services. Kiki leads the West Coast office with a focus on client relationships, business development, HR management, employee taxes, and global payroll. Kiki, welcome back. We last encountered you with our San Diego session in person last year, and just delighted to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and it's lovely to be back. Let me just start by saying that it's really lovely to be connected with you all. I'm actually sat in London this evening, so it's already dark here for me. Hopefully you can see my slides, and actually I'm going to work from the basis that Mark started with. And what I'd like to talk about is those employees which you're out recruiting from anywhere and working from anywhere. And, the whole situation has changed very much over the last 7 or 8 months, hasn't it? What we've seen is businesses closing their premises and asking their employees to work from home. And for you guys who are in the tech or biotech sector where it's okay for you to work from home, it's kind of become the normal. And that normal is the same all over the world. It's not just in America. In the UK, the whole of Fitzgerald and Law has suddenly been working from home. And that technology means that you can stay connected with your team wherever you are. We're all a bit zoomed out. We've been using Microsoft Teams, and there's so much technology that makes it available. But frankly, it's hard work, isn't it? It really does stress everybody out, having to go onto these team calls all the time, making sure that the kids aren't around, the cat's not walking in front of the screen, and there isn't any outside noise. But what it does mean is that you can live and work in other locations. You don't have to be tied to your head office. And actually, in working in other locations, it actually means you can work in any country, you can work in any continent, and that's okay, isn't it? As long as you get your work done. I mean, who cares? I mean, it's really simple, isn't it? But it isn't, because everybody in HR knows that it isn't simple, and that there's a whole heap of questions that we need to think about if everybody is working remotely. And if we want to start recruiting people remotely, things have to change. Now, I don't want to be really negative about it, because I think there's massive amounts of positive. I mean, for instance, I've claimed 2.5 hours a day because I don't have to commute anymore. And that is fantastic. Knowing that I can have a call at 8 a.m. in the morning and I don't have to get out of bed until 7:45. I mean, that's fantastic. There's no commute. And we can have our life and our work around those hours, around those meetings. And that means that we can fit our lifestyle. So if I want to go out and have my run halfway through the day, it's okay now. As long as I'm back for that call later in the afternoon, it doesn't really matter. Provided that we're kind of around in full in those call hours and we're doing the job that we need to do, we can have that flexibility. And I think employees have enjoyed that flexibility of not feeling like they're having to clock in and clock out. From an HR perspective, and for actually attracting the right talent, the advantage has been that we can get the best people. And that means that we can look around the whole world and get the best people regardless of where they live. So there's a whole heap of new talent out there that we can go and get. And our employee experience is so much better, because if you're living where you really want to live, near where your family is, where it's cheaper, where it's sunnier, and today in the UK, it's been grey and raining. So anywhere better than here would be great. It means that you can have a much better positive experience about your job. And so that life-work balance just makes so much sense. And why do we need to pay so much per square foot for our office? There's no office costs. There's no premium salaries to recruit everybody into the city. It's all very positive, isn't it? Except it isn't. There's a whole load of other things that we need to think about. And you need to get all of the leaders in your organization to understand that there are some disadvantages. There are some things that you need to think about. So what is it that you do need to think about? Well, if everybody's working remotely, you lose that corporate culture. You lose that team connectivity, those kind of sparks of innovation, of ideas, of collaborating with each other that you have when you're in a room and you're thinking hard about a solution to a problem. All of that opportunity in that environment goes away. And you end up with what I've talked about actually before, is you're herding cats. You have this challenge of trying to manage all of these people around the world in different time zones. You're having to coach them, train them, connect them. And everybody's on Zoom, but do we really love Zoom? I think we all hate Zoom a little bit, don't we? So how do you herd all these cats into this strong corporate culture that you used to have? It's really tough, isn't it? How is HR going to help with that? And I hate to be boring, but there's a whole heap of compliance stuff that you need to think about. Legal, tax, payroll, insurance, and you're going to have to manage that in HR across multiple locations, which you didn't have to do before. Are you going to go and find a vendor for your legal, tax and payroll insurance in every single country, in every single canton or state or borough? You're going to have to manage all of that. Somebody has to manage it to make sure that you are trading legally. There's a whole heap of regulatory issues that you need to be aware of, and you need to make sure that you are on the ball before you have somebody in your C-suite say, yeah, everybody can work wherever they like. It's fine. So what you need to do is get yourself in a place where you've got a policy. Is it the role that can work anywhere, or is it because that specific person is okay to work from anywhere? And is it really anywhere? Can we have anybody working anywhere in the world? Is that really okay? Because some countries, as an employer, it's really expensive. It's really difficult. There's lots of laws that you have to abide by. Do you really want all of those obligations? So you need to have a policy which says we're okay for people to work anywhere, provided it's not in these places. And is it okay for people to work flexible hours, to work in any kind of time zone? And I think from my perspective is, what kind of pay are you going to pay these people? Are you going to pay them in a London city rates if they're working in a really low cost country? Or are you going to have some kind of hybrid policy where you start to pay people some kind of global benchmark salary? And it doesn't matter where they live or what currency they're paid in, but you have to be able to benchmark it with something, don't you? Not everyone's going to be benchmarked with the West Coast of America, because that would be really silly and really expensive. If you're going to change their benchmark pay, are you going to pay them a working home allowance? Are you going to pay for their Wi-Fi and their heating and their electricity? And are you going to make sure that they do come and visit the office on a regular basis? If you want them to visit the office for training, who's going to pay the travel, you or them? And finally, about the training, the one thing that I really struggle with is remote training. Is how are you going to do that? There's some really great facilities now where you can do online training, but there really is nothing that replicates that kind of sitting next to the expert, sitting next to people who have been learning the business for years, learning those good behaviors, listening to all of those kind of discussions and telephone calls, learning how to behave in front of a client. You lose all of that from Zoom. People, the youngsters are really not getting that opportunity. And as HR, we've got to try and work out what is the new way of doing that. And obviously, the office politics comes into play. We mentioned before, how do I get my promotion? Well, you're not going to have that water cooler conversation anymore. You're not going to have that quick drink at the bar after work to talk about your future. How can you as an individual orchestrate all of those situations remotely? So whilst there's loads of advantages, there are also some really challenging issues that you need to think about. Finally, international assignments. What do we need to do? Can we send somebody on an international assignment anymore? Can we do that kind of slightly different role, working from home? Because it's really important that they have these different roles for career enhancement. It's a learning experience. And can you think about somebody having a virtual assignment without actually traveling to their new location? That's an interesting one. Finally, working from anywhere, compliance. Payroll, you have to be compliant with your taxes, your social security, your workers' comp. These things are very important, including employment law. Data security, it's such a big issue. You need to make sure that you get it right. I'm not going to say any more, but do take advice and make sure you get it right. Thank you very much.
Kiki, thanks so much. Again, great information. Can we, by the way, we'll be able to use your slides later. Can we share those slides with our audience?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Again, so good to see you again. Hopefully, we're going to see you again in San Diego in person the coming year. But again, thanks for teeing that up for us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future. And again, thanks so much to Fitzgerald and Law for supporting us.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to bring up Monica now, Monica Lloyd. And by the way, for the audience, we have got some stellar speakers coming. Just stay with us. We've got Karen Smith coming, Susan Howington, Angelica Wong, and Ewing Gillespie of IBM will be joining us. You've got the bios that were sent to you in advance. They're also on the website. And also join us for lunch. Again, in Zoom time, we can't see your eating as an audience. So I know you're going to enjoy this next series. I want to bring up now Monica Lloyd. She's manager pre-sales of Ascentus Human Capital Management. Ascentus is another one of our great partners and supporters. Monica has over 20 years experience in all facets of human resources and business operations. As manager pre-sale of Ascentus, she provides customized product demonstrations and solution selling for the entire Ascentus HCM product line. Client needs analysis, competitive market positioning and sales team support, strategy planning, analyzing prospect requirements, and delivering highly targeted product demonstrations. Again, we've been working with Ascentus for some time now. We're very pleased to be associated with them. Monica, welcome. Glad to have you back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It makes me tired just to hear you say all of those things. Well, today I want to talk about collaboration and collaborative learning. And we're going to use Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. So come with me while we learn about collaborative learning via the yellow brick road. So the first thing we have to talk about is what traditional training actually looks like, where you have a trainer, much like Oz, who's pulling the levers and the strings. And it's the company content being taught to you, the person who's doing the work. They're determining what is best and saying, take this and apply it. Now, don't get me wrong, this is absolutely needed. Think about anti-harassment training and compliance training. But there's arguably a better solution for the day-to-day items that happen: on-the-job training, cross-training, new skills training, even think about onboarding. So when we talk about what collaborative learning is, and as everybody mentioned before me, Kiki had a great observation that we have to move faster. And how are we going to train people if we can't come in and sit in a classroom? So this is a group-led training that is tweaked based on feedback from students. It's typically small groups where they all learn from each other. And you'll see from the little pyramid there that it increases retention. It also increases the responsibilities, and it creates a coaching culture. It empowers people to share the best practices. And while they're discussing and practicing and teaching others, they're retaining more. It also leads to a learning organization, which we say that a lot. That's a very popular phrase, but it's a culture of learning that also allows safety nets for people to fail and opportunities for growth, just like Dorothy when she embarked on her collaborative brick road learning. Think about Dorothy being a new employee, and along the way, she's going to find seasoned members that are going to help her. And together they'll learn using past experiences, maybe their current job. They're teaching her something that she needs to know about her current job. And current situations and challenges will come up individually. Think about when the Scarecrow and Dorothy ran into the Tin Man. They had to figure out that they needed to oil him up to get him to be a part of their team. It's a way for them to work as a part of the greater whole, where everybody is bringing something to the table. It also challenges the rigid opinions and behaviors that have happened in the past. And right now, I think that's being challenged a lot in what we call the now normal. Everything's being challenged, and including our training. Along the way, you're going to keep adding members. So as you're doing some sort of training, you might go, oh, let's grab somebody from another department. It helps you stay away from silos. And it also brings a huge heightened awareness to what each individual brings to the table. They can collaborate to challenges, distill what every individual is good at, and offer up people to be brazen about how they can help the team and how they can help solve a problem. Getting people on board as teachers is the way that you set the stage for this. So instead of the old dog who's forced into training, what you really want to do is let people know, hey, you need to share your knowledge. And I need you to be a part of this team because the team wants to know more about how you do things. And so it's all about the setup. Now, training will grow and evolve with every interaction, every iteration. So think about Dorothy and her companions where they're dealing with the witch for the third time. It's completely different when the witch has fire. So they had to think through something else. And through defending their positions and reframing ideas, your employees will start listening to each other's viewpoints and articulating their points, and will start understanding as a group more than they could as individuals, and it creates a growth mindset for the company. This also will highlight the strengths and also stretch people into something they didn't know about themselves. Think about the scarecrow who had to come up with a plan to get Dorothy from the tower, or the lion who had to be brave. What you're doing here is invoking the fear of keeping up so that everybody wants to learn. So a real-world example of what collaborative learning can look like is we have some sales folks in our organization at Ascentus that have great strengths and some who have weaknesses. Think LinkedIn, cold calls, outreach calls, people who use mutual action plans really well. So what we did is we set up cohorts, and we let the cohorts work together, and we took people with different strengths and put them together. Every month they meet on a Zoom call, and they talk about a current sales op, and they talk about how I did it, what I did to progress this, or what I did that was really special about this. And they share success stories. And then you rinse and repeat it every month so that people are learning the best practices. Think about YouTube type training as well, where you have one person who's really good at something, videotape them or have them do a quick how-to and then send that out to the team. Now, it's important to note that you have a coach or a facilitator role. It's very hard to come up with exactly what it is because it might be a supervisor or a trainer or even a peer, right? Maybe you want to get rid of the supervisor in the room so that different discussions can happen. That person will document the outcomes, hold the space, create a welcome environment, maybe do follow-up items, and retool the training. So remember that this collaborative training is where peers are focused on learning and coaches are monitoring and communicating on the bigger picture. And this is driving growth for the organization, but also the coach may end up learning things as well. So it is a give and take among everyone. And lastly, how do we do that in today's environment? Well, you use Zoom. And I know we talk about Zoom fatigue, but it's really the only option we have. But you also have calls. We have a Teams chat that we have just our group on. So instead of doing individual teams, we have a team with everybody in on our department. And it's about 15 of us, and we all can jump in and write down, a question that we have, and people will look up an answer and get back. And now everybody is part of that learning environment. Also think about calls after meetings and postmortems after actual events. So why do you want to do this? Well, we talked about the benefits of 90% retention, so there's no training follow-up, creating a learning culture, and studies show that ROI is off the charts at 340%. We live in a knowledge economy. The pace of business is moving super fast. It's moving as fast as information can travel, as you saw from Scott's slide. To keep up and compete, you need to increase the speed at which you train and share your employee knowledge, onboard your employees, develop leaders, and identify gaps. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll pass it back to you.
Monica, thanks so much. That was a terrific overview. And again, thanks for joining us again. Very stimulating discussion. And again, I know you'll stick around for the Q&A. Speaking of Q&A, Dr. Dana Brown. Dr. Dana Brown will be joining us at the conclusion of the session. So you'll want to stick around, and she's going to give us her reflections in her special wrap-up along with your Q&A. So again, keep submitting your Q&A. I see them coming in through some Zoom, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. Keep your questions coming. We will get to all of them. Now, it's my pleasure to bring up Karen Smith, our long-term friend of Executive Next Practice Institute, the ReInvent HR series, the Disrupt HR series we've been doing over the years. Karen's made a transition this year over to be Vice President of People and Culture for Omni. I'm going to misspell that. You're going to have to help us with the pronunciation of your new company, Karen.
Omniome.
Omniome. Thank you. Omniome is a very unique company, which I'm sure Karen will talk about, but she's just joined in 2020. And she is, in my mind, one of the most progressive HR executives in the area. And we're just delighted to have her part of our team and part of our network. Prior to this course, she's been with LPL Financial, Encore Capital Group, Verb, and Harris's Group. But so again, Karen, welcome back. Certainly not in our normal live setting, but a good second place here. Look forward to it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Scott, and hello, everyone. It is certainly a little bit unique this time around. I'm not going to lie about that. However, we are all in this together, and we are all finding how to react in this new environment. So with that, what I'm going to bring to you today, I noticed already there are a few themes coming through from Mark, Kiki, and Monica's talk. So I'm happy to see that we're all resonating in this together. We're going to talk a little bit about how our workplace is transitioning and transforming. So as Scott mentioned, I took on a new role June 1st. Very interesting to jump into a new workforce in this stage. But I have to say, what I'm planning to do today for you is bring you an 8-minute prescription for how we can navigate through this transformation. We'll talk briefly about the changing landscapes we're all experiencing, how our leaders can overcome some of these new challenges. Then I will take you through a current example that we just implemented in Omniome, along with some testimonials as my evidence that it has worked. So as we all know, we are changing our environments. Organizations are quickly going through these levels of transformations, and everybody's landing in a different place. Some are downsizing. Some can only allow ascension critical workers into their workplace. Many companies have gone 100% remote, which is new and foreign to very many people. And many are doing a hybrid of any of these. This brings new challenges to all of them, some of which I have picked to focus on today. Disconnect. So many people are feeling disconnected, and it's not just within our workforces, it's along our social circles, our families. We can't see certain people. It's causing a lot of new frustrations. And collaboration, not because we don't want to collaborate, but because we simply can't in the manner of which we used to. Fear of what's next. Fear, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose family members? Am I going to get sick? So many different levels of fear are happening, and that comes into the workplace. And finally, our overall well-being. We keep hearing so much about how important mental health is, and we're really starting to see the various different degrees of how that impacts our team members. So your prescription, how can we help our leaders overcome these new challenges? These are just a few ways, and it's a framework we're using, so I wanted to share that with you. Listen, discover, and act. This really goes to what Mark was saying. You can't measure, you can't listen without acting. Each team member has its own set of struggles. You don't know what's happening at home. The person who lives alone, who's very outgoing and social, might really be struggling with being isolated and away from the normal life that they once had. Be in tune as a leader with where those various degrees of discomforts and frustrations and challenges live. Gather that feedback and really show through your actions and your communication that you've heard and you're listening and you're helping. Connect. This is big. We have to find new ways to connect together. And we already know people are Zoomed out, people are teamed out, but these things truly help because they're giving us that ability to see faces and body language, which, by the way, I'm missing right now. I prefer the stage over Zoom because I can't see you. But find new ways. We have so many opportunities with technology and new resources, and really be creative. Connectedness is truly the key of our workforce. Protect. Those of you who are in HR positions are probably like me. We now have 2 full-time jobs. We are the Chief COVID Officer. Keeping up with the ever-changing requirements, understanding how they impact our counties or other locations within our organizations, and really being tuned in to those opinions of current situations beyond COVID. We don't know how different people are handling all of what's being thrown at us right now. So we have to find ways to understand that, implement new initiatives, and manage those things accordingly. So how did Omniome do that? We wanted to listen, discover, and act. So we put together a COVID impact survey. To give you a little context, we're a biotech company, so we are essentially in the office. We still have a hybrid. We're not all there at one time. Our critical workers are. We have labs and scientists. So it was really important to find ways that we can ensure that we are creating the culture and environment that helps people and show them their voice matters. We went through 4 different areas: safety, support, productivity, and connectedness. I'm so happy, especially with my chief COVID officer hat on, that safety, we're at 94%. That means we are really doing this right. Productivity and connectedness is where I'm worried. So we as a leadership team have really come together and found ways to help the employees with those aspects. We basically took that stop, start, continue approach, and of course, shared the actions so employees could see we measured something and we're doing something about it. In terms of productivity, we did a lot with alternative schedules. We did not have a telecommute program because we had everybody in both of our locations. We now do, and with that, there are appropriate resources, equipment, and reimbursements to really help set people up for success at home, as many of you have as well, I'm sure. One area we found was critical was having some support for parents. There are so many new challenges, no matter what age children are. The parents being with the children all day long, distance learning, et cetera, are very challenging. So we put together a support group where they could help each other and share resources. Connectedness. This is big. We invested in virtual events. We looked at our budget. We didn't spend more. We actually spent less, because if you think of things like company picnics, holiday parties, those are thousands of dollars. We invested in a company that is bringing moderated, facilitated events to organizations to help us through this. And we have seen our employees have a lot of fun with this, and we'll keep doing that. One of my favorites is the water cooler meeting. This is an opportunity to jump on a Zoom call or a Teams call and not work, but really talk about those things that we do when we pass cubicles or stand out in the parking lot and catch up. We have a new buddy program. We've allowed people to be in conference rooms with very strict restrictions, but it does give that in-person opportunity. One of the biggest things we did was launch an internal project marketplace. This is so people can connect with their colleagues, go into other areas of the organization they don't on a regular basis, and work on projects. In terms of some of the testimonials in those 2 areas of concern we had, I'm so happy to see how things have turned around. In productivity, people are feeling a lot more productive now that we've set them up for success at home. There's no commute for work. Generally, there's no hair and makeup preparation, so people are spending actually more time working. They appreciate the flexibility to help integrate with the rest of their lives. On the connectedness piece, more of that cross-functional opportunity has really lifted spirits, and we do a lot in terms of those activities to help and have fun at the same time. Again, it's not rocket science, but if we look back, listening, discovering, and acting, showing those actions, showing you heard are critical. Empower your leaders, help them be creative, help them understand the various levels of needs that each individual has, because again, we don't know what's happening in all of their lives. Let's keep them motivated and supported. Consider doing something like we did, a survey or focus groups to give your team that voice and then set the action plans. Create that culture of transparency and support. It is even more important now than it was yesterday. And find those new ways to collaborate and connect. Have fun with it. I hope that helps. I hope you can take that away as a prescription for success in your organizations. And I appreciate, in quotations, seeing you all today.
Karen, again, it was great seeing you again, unfortunately virtually, but again, terrific presentation, very timely. And we'll look forward to, again, working with you. Hopefully, we're going to be back at one of these live settings very soon with you. Yeah, it's been too long. So I know I'll have you stick around for the Q&A, and we'll come back. But again, thank you so much for teeing us up. All right, so we'll move on here to our long-term friend, Susan Howington, CEO of Power Connections. Susan has been with Executive Next Practice as one of our partners since before it was E&P, over a decade ago. She runs a terrific practice called Power Connections, which helps career services, which helps executives of all types find their way in their next path and new paths of transition. She's also a terrific speaker. She was recently on the Spectrum cable TV show called Eye on Business. Please welcome Susan Howington. Susan, glad to have you back.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm trying to get my slide presentation up here. Pardon me, everyone. But no worries if I can't do it.
Looking good.
No, that's the wrong one, huh? Let's see. That's all right. That's okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to do without my slides because in reality, my presentation is super simple. And I'm going to go through only 5 tips because we only have a few minutes here. But these tips are basic. And some of you might think as I'm going through them, you think, well, this is pretty, elementary stuff. But I'm sharing this because as a career management coach and a person that is working with people in particular who are trying to find new work, I'm in the outplacement business. And also as an executive coach, I see these things that people are doing on screen. So they're simple, but few adhere to them. So let me start with tip 1. So I'm going to give you 5 tips. Tip 1 is don't let working from home diminish from your professional image. I realized that when we started working from home, the bar was set really low for all of us. And in fact, corporate recruiters often told me that they try to look beyond the person's image and their background and what the scene is around the interview visually, because this has thrown everybody off and people just they're not prepared and they don't know what to do. Now, the bottom line is this is not a new business environment for us anymore. It's become the standard operating procedure. We've now been doing this for 8 months. So the expectations are now different for us. So we've been able to get away from getting dressed for work and all the other things that we used to do to prepare our professional image. That has been a nice thing for most of us. But in the long run, it could hinder those of you who have exempted yourself from prepping yourself for your professional persona. So what happens if you're not matching your persona to, let's say, pre-COVID image? What can happen there is that there is a misalignment in our image with others, and that causes confusion. And I think as we go through some of these other tips, you'll get a better understanding of what I mean by confusion, alignment, misalignment, brand confusion. So the second tip is this: set a stage for your virtual calls. We all have access to background templates. I encourage you to use them, and here's why. If you're using your living room or your bedroom or your kitchen dining room table, and the background behind you is visibly unkempt, it's distracting somehow, it's not interesting to the viewer, you can be hindering your professional persona with them because, like it or not, we all have unconscious biases. We really do. We'd like to work on those things, but we can make judgments about you based on your personal space and circumstances. It's just one of those things of life. So I'm going to tell you an example of what I think is a classic case of misalignment of someone's brand. I was working with an executive from one of the big accounting firms, I won't say which one, and he was holding a virtual call with myself and another team member, and the call was being held from his home office. Behind him were framed pictures of heavy metal bands. So we saw Metallica, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, and I know these bands because I was looking right at them. I could clearly see them. And what was so weird about this to me is he was dressed up for the call. So here we have a guy who is in a very traditional line of business. His industry is very traditional, highly regulated. The branding of being into the heavy metal scene didn't fit, in my view, for an executive out of one of the big top accounting firms. So during the call, I was listening to him, but I was looking at his posters. I was looking at him. I was thinking, what in the world? How does this all fit? In my mind, it didn't fit. So his background, although it was nicely done and he looked great, it was misaligned with who I envisioned him as a professional. So the third tip is limit the incidences of household interruptions. Karen Smith, I want to congratulate you on the efforts of your company to support those employees that are parents and have to deal with the kids at home. I just can't even imagine. Honestly, I can't imagine. But by trying to limit them, I would like to just encourage our parents who are on this call to think of how important it is. So let me give you an example. Maybe some of you have seen that, actually it's very hilarious YouTube of the BBC news correspondent who was being interviewed. This is right at the beginning of COVID. And he was being interviewed on CNN Global from his home office. He forgot to lock his door, and in paraded his two adorable toddlers who literally paraded and danced into the room. All the while, he was trying to shove them away and keep them out of the view of the camera, which he was absolutely unsuccessful doing that. And then came in his mortified wife, who was horrified that the kids were in the call, and she was crouching down as low as she could and grabbed those children. But unfortunately, we all witnessed the whole thing in living color in live time. Now, it was super cute. It was super funny, but trust me, that BBC commentator never wants that to happen again. One time is funny, second time it's acceptable, third time it can be professional disaster. So try your very best to minimize household incidences. And by the way, the outside world is annoyingly noisy. Remember, we've got that little button on our laptops that's called mute. Mute out the noise when it's particularly obtrusive. Okay, our fourth tip is it's important to be seen on calls. And I mean seen, that our faces are shown. Why is this important, you say? Because of this. If we don't see you, we just see your name there, we're wondering why. Is your personal hygiene taking the day off? Are you doing something else while you're on the call? Are you doing your nails? I've been guilty of this, everybody. Are you doing your nails? Are you folding laundry? What could you be doing? Are you sitting in the parking lot at Target just waiting for the call to finish so you can go in and buy some exercise clothes? Whatever the case may be. People need to see you. They want to see you. It is representative of your engagement on the call, which leads me to the fifth and last point. Stay engaged on virtual calls. You don't leave a meeting to answer a phone call or go to the doorbell or that kind of thing. Normally, stay engaged. And if you have to excuse yourself from the call, do so politely. Now, bio breaks is another story, but try as you can to stay engaged in that call and stay visible. So as I said, these tips are very quick and easy. I guarantee you, if you follow them, it will enhance your professional persona, and it will not sway your boss or your peers away from their thought of you as a committed, engaged employee. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm really happy to be a part of this. Thank you again, Scott.
Thanks again, Susan. Great seeing you again. Thanks for all your contributions over the years to this whole series and to E&P. Great seeing you. So stick around. We'll come back to you. So in the interest of moving forward, we're going to move on to Angelica Gamble-Wong, who's Vice President of People, Culture, and Experience at Harrah's Resort, California, for Caesars Entertainment. Again, as I mentioned, she's VP of People, Culture, and Experience. And again, most of you know this. Angelica was awarded in 2017. She was awarded San Diego HR Forum's San Diego HR Executive of the Year Award, and her team was awarded HR Team of the Year in 2019. Welcome again, Angelica. I think you're going to be coming in now. Let's see.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Excellent, got it.
Okay, fantastic. And hopefully you just see the presentation. Well, thanks so much, Scott. My topic is about the importance of leadership in crisis. In 2007, Nicholas Taleb famously proposed the theory of the black swan event. You may have heard about it in the financial news recently, with much discussion about whether the coronavirus pandemic is considered a black swan event, a completely unpredictable event with significant consequences. The theory of a gray swan event is that it's an event that can't be predicted but can't be imagined, has significant consequences which cascade through the economy, and because it was something that we could have imagined, we should have planned for it. Taleb believes that this coronavirus crisis is not a black swan event, but rather a gray swan event. In fact, in 2015, Bill Gates spoke of our lack of readiness to deal with a pandemic. However, regardless of what type of swan event you believe the coronavirus pandemic is, and whether or not we should have planned for it, leadership in response to this crisis is absolutely critical. American researcher and futurist Roy Amara back in the 1960s was speaking about technology and said, "We tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run." I propose that the same theory applies to leadership. We tend to focus on immediate results, which are of course important, but it is the long-term results and the long-term thinking that we tend to underestimate. But those are the ones that have the greatest impact on our people and our organizations. This is especially challenging at times when we face situations which have impacts that go beyond the next financial reporting cycle. That is when our investments as leaders must have longer-term returns and therefore longer-term focus. Although there are many leadership attributes that are important, in order to deal with the challenging situation we find ourselves in now, this gray swan event, I believe that the following are critical. Communication. Frequent increased communication in times of uncertainty is absolutely critical. When people are not communicated with, they tend to fill in the blanks themselves, and when they fill in those blanks, it is not what the best case scenario. More communication is needed, not less. Transparency. In times of crisis and quickly changing circumstances, transparency is so important, especially as we cannot be completely certain of the success of our decisions. We need to be honest and share that we are making decisions taking into account facts as we know them today. This allows for what I like to call pivoting without remorse. As circumstances change and strategy and tactics have to take those into account. Consistent. From the top, the middle, and below. Help other leaders in your organization by giving them talking points and taking the time to ensure that everyone understands them. That helps the message be consistent across all platforms, team members, customers, and markets. Crisis requires compassion. Seek real understanding of the challenges that your team members and customers are going through. For team members, is it managing by project deadlines rather than by working hours? For our customers, how can we help them solve their problems in these times? Listen, People want to be heard. They want to ensure that you understand what they are going through. Take the time to listen, as Karen said. You will not only be able to empathize better, you will be able to connect better with your teams. And there is no better way to engender trust than through authenticity. Sharing your feelings, your concerns, and hopes, and the fact that you may not have all the answers either, makes people feel like you understand their situation. As leaders, we have increased anxiety as well. We tend to want to delay the course to take forward until it is a bit more clear. But sometimes things call for urgent action. That is why courage is so critical. We have to make decisions sometimes with only the information that we have at hand. We have to be willing to make a mistake and be confident enough that if we do make a mistake, that we will be able to recover. But crisis calls for action. An important component of courage is psychological autonomy, the willingness to make a decision or propose a solution contrary to popular opinion or what everyone else is doing. That is a true attribute of a leader, someone who thinks for themselves, who can be a thought leader and take on the risk of doing so. And as many of you know, the ability to summon up courage time and time again takes energy and resiliency. True leaders build courage by continually addressing, not running away from crisis. There is no predefined response plan that we can always turn to. Every crisis evolves, grows, and sometimes worsens before it is resolved. Being able to deal with new challenges requires creativity. Resourcefulness is absolutely critical, as is the ability to draw solutions from similar situations or extrapolate possible solutions from responses to past challenges. It's the thinking outside of the box that becomes extremely critical. In order to be agile, we also need to be able to sift through all the information that is coming at us and focus on the most critical. You must be able to prioritize, especially when situations are complex. Amazingly, so many times taking action on the most critical elements helps clear the path for smaller issues to move forward toward resolution. This need to integrate a lot of information emphasizes the need to rely on our teams. We need their expertise and their perspectives to help us integrate all the various components of the problem in order to make the best decisions. Leaders do not stand alone. There was an article written by Gemma DeOria and Aaron DeSmet as part of the McKinsey Collective on Leadership in Crisis. They wrote of the need for leaders to have calm and optimism. Deliberate calm is what our teams need, to see a leader standing firm and strong and to engender hope for a positive outcome rather than an impending disaster. Bounded optimism is the ability of a leader to see light at the end of the tunnel, to see a positive outcome, but bounded in order to build credibility as it must be realistic. But it is critical that for our teams, our companies, and our economy, that we remain optimistic. Leaders always emerge in a crisis. Two examples, whether you agree with their stances or not, are the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who has led her country to one of the most successful responses to the coronavirus pandemic, and NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, who in early March suspended the NBA season to protect the fans and players at the risk of losing billions of dollars. Both communicated their visions, made their decisions with compassion and understanding that their decisions would have negative implications on many, but felt that they were making decisions which in the longer term would better serve their constituents and customers. They both had the courage to be different and to take a stand after taking many different factors into account. Both showed their calm and steadfastness in light of much opposition, and always included in their communications the belief of successfully weathering the crisis. I leave you with this thought. Crisis is an opportunity for leadership. It's an opportunity for you. Your teams, your companies, and your industry need you. Be the leader that they need, regardless of the color of swan event that you are facing. And I will try to stop sharing here and turn it back to you.
I got the audio on, Scott. My videos. Scott, you're on mute, I think, if you're talking.
There we go. Now we've got you. Thanks again, Angelica, for that overview. And now we look forward to Ewing Gillespie Ewing is Senior Management Consultant for Talent and HR Transformation for IBM. He's a frequent speaker for E&P. He's done so in our New York offices. Ewing, welcome. You're going to take us right into the audience Q&A as you get settled into your seat there.
Yeah.
Thanks again for joining us.
All right, great. Hey, thanks for having me. I very much enjoy these forums and getting out and networking. Of course, now we're networking, on Zoom. And let me just, I'll turn my background here so my lighting is a little better. As you might imagine, you've all pivoted and had to move around and change your background as well. So I agree with some of the earlier comments, but I want to add one piece, and that is authenticity. What we've learned over the last 6 to 8 months is that authenticity trumps all. So when I show up like this and I put on this jacket, I'm trying to do all that professional stuff that we were told earlier in our career matters. And it does matter to a certain extent. But when you take authenticity away, right, then we are pattern recognition experts as humans, all of us. It's baked into our DNA. And when that pattern doesn't ring true to us, then we start to lose trust. And so I would encourage you all to think about all of your camera work and admit, be brave enough to show people that, really what you do is wear shorts, because you're only on camera this much. And the fact that if you have to get up and get a coffee and someone sees you wearing shorts, I want you to retrain your mind to believe that that's actually a trust building moment, not a loss of credibility moment. And this will differ by generations. And it's important to take, different perspectives on this topic, but we've been able to test this. And what we specifically tested is when we present with slides and sort of the traditional method versus just being on camera and turning the slides off. So I'm going to take you through some information here. So that's my point about sort of some of these other comments. Many of them I greatly agreed with, but that authenticity piece is key. So a lot of people have been pontificating, not on this call, but in general. You probably get invited to a webinar every day or every week about what to do about the future. And instead of trying to tell you yet another theory that is mostly an opinion, I want to tell you what people are buying. Right? I want to tell you what other HR leaders are doing. What are they doing with that prioritization, with those precious few resources they have? So let's get right into it. We did a survey. One of the great things about being at IBM is, we're able to have this tremendous reach. We did a survey of over 400 C-levels, and these are CTO, COO, CEO, about what they are investing in and how they are reprioritizing their spend. And as you can see here, if you look at the darker blue line, that's the benefits they expect in 2 years, and then compared to the benefits 2 years ago. So what has changed? If you look at some of these, I'm going to highlight them for you. I'm going to go ahead and jump. Areas where investments are increasing, look at all the ones that have to do with HR. So, there's been some comments around HR is in the driver's seat. HR is the front of COVID like never before. You can see that in these surveys. There's no CHROs in this survey. These are the business leaders saying, these are the things we've got to do now. So if you're not working on some of these, know that the leading companies, and you think about all the disruption and all the companies, Amazon and others have put out of business, these are the companies that are still around, that are still commanding big market shares. This is how they're voting with their dollars. So I thought it might be interesting to see this because this is factual and this is happening versus me trying to tell you what I think. And here's the key areas where we see the most engagement, right? So it's areas around where they can take cost out and invest in skills, recruiting, and being ready when the market opens back up. A lot of talent acquisition teams were decimated, depending on the industry. And, oftentimes a company may assume it's easy to build that back, but they might have a recruiting leader that's never built a department from scratch in their entire career. That's a brand new assignment and a high risk assignment. So to the extent that organizations are able to do that alone, we're finding that to be rare. More and more companies are partnering like never before to get through some of this stuff. I want to talk to you about the HR ops. So value pillars you see here, similar stuff you've seen many times, but the 12 below, if you get these slides afterwards, those are the 12 areas where organizations are finding the most money to reinvest in their strategy. And many of these are things that are just kind of never made it over the cut line. Last 5 years of fall planning never quite made it over the cut line. Now they're accelerating over the cut line because they can produce more money to invest in other things. So if we take an example here, I'm just going to click and play for you. Hopefully you can hear the audio.
Now for work to be pushed down into a lower cost org, obviously because of COVID and everything else. But from that perspective, the ability to take on that extra work, we're going to need automation. We just can't continue to scale employees. It's just not feasible in this world.
So in case you didn't hear that, the end was we just cannot continue to scale employees. It's just not feasible in this world. This is a gentleman, a VP of transformation, talking about the shared services strategy. And here's a quick little test for you to take back to your organization. How many of your tickets that go into your HR operations are solved by technology, the first interaction with the user, with no human involved whatsoever? If that number is not 25, you're probably behind. If that number is not 70 or more, then you're probably not top 10, 25%. So if you think you're top 10, 25%, and you still have humans answering all of the tickets for your organization, you have a cost opportunity there. You could be reinvesting somewhere else. And so as we work through this, an example of how an organization aligned these value pools to their core themes. Many of you have seen stuff like this before. And then, the next generation operating model. Next gen operating model, I get asked about that maybe on every call. And I gave you one little teaser on, how you can assess where you're at. The other point about this work is that consulting firms like us and others, definitely others too, are wanting to meet you where you're at to build this strategy. So if you're not engaging an outside firm, or you've not found a firm willing to help you, maybe at no cost for the discovery piece, keep looking, because they're out there and you shouldn't feel like you have to figure all this out alone. And so a lot of folks think they're at HR 2.0 and on the path to 3.0, but they still don't know what skills their employees have. And so another big piece is now it's time to get the data right more than ever before, because if you don't, you can't have automation. You can't take that cost out, because if you don't know all of the different department codes and those are all mapped and you have good hierarchy information in your HRIS structure, then you're not going to do automated people moves. You're going to do human generated and human led people moves with huge drags on your HR business partners' time and things that, quite frankly, technology has been able to do for the last 2 years. So I'll leave you with this one piece on recruiting. I just want to touch on this. I mentioned at the beginning of the call. I left this here again for a leave behind. As you get ready to build your recruiting strategy to come back from COVID, if you don't have your processes organized like this, seems really simple, but as we dig in, sometimes we find that this level of diligence hasn't been completed. Go ahead and start this work, because that's what it's going to take to be able to compete and be able to execute with a cost structure that doesn't create a drag on your P&L and doesn't cause your CHRO to have to ask the business for more money just to keep up with the status quo of how others are executing. So, start to do some homework. This is a good map here. It's free to have. With that, Scott, I'm going to give you 1 minute back here and take a couple questions.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to move to, thanks so much, Ewing. If you'll stop your share, and we're going to bring up Dr. Dina Brown. And Dr. Dina Brown is founder of Leadership Movement. She's a speaker, author, entrepreneur, and part of our Executive Next Practice advisory group. Dina, so here's your chance. You're so good at this. We've heard from terrific speakers this morning. Can you kind of give us your quick download of what you're taking away from this and what our audience should be thinking about?
Absolutely, Scott. Thank you so much for having me. And this is so exciting. So although I've spoken on the stage, this is actually one of my favorite things to do. So go ahead and grab your pencil and your pen. And, I'm going to go very quickly through each speaker and some really key takeaways and paint the picture for you about really looking at your HR proposition. So starting with Mark. When we think about that, communication, connection, compensation, culture, that's everything HR. It means being in the trenches, on the front line, and providing impactful solutions with our business, with our behavior, and thinking beyond the right now when you're able to do that. And it was great to have Kiki come in and really expand on that and talk about recruitment from anywhere. And that although we've closed the doors, we've opened up the workspace, but there's two sides to that legal story. We have the sunny side, which gives us flexibility, alignment, balance, and savings, but yet those storm clouds come in when we talk about, corporate synergy and challenges and compliance. But the key is there's an umbrella that we use, and that's the policy that we implement, and to help people work and actually live better with employee training, compliance, and creativity. That actually provides the sunscreen that you need to protect your employees from those sun rays that weren't necessarily covered by your umbrella. And Miss Monica. So here is a great opportunity for us to ascend and accelerate our growth. As we tread down and travel that yellow brick road together, we learn that it will take collaborative, cooperative, and comprehensive experiences grounded in coaching and strong cohorts to keep our communities intact. And we cannot neglect what Karen brought to the table, because when we're transforming the workplace, it's kind of like when Jack traded his family cow for some magic beans. And here's that challenging landscape. There's new environment, and there's fear of the unknown. However, when you listen, discover, act, connect, and protect your employees' mindset and their mission, you will experience exponential growth. And Susan just really kept it simple for us and brought all of these together. If you want to power up your performance and your professional presence, you must hold your image. You must set the stage. You have to limit distractions internally and externally. You must be seen, and you have to stay engaged. Angelica, thank you so much for talking with us about leadership and crisis in 2020. It's actually been about the birds, right? Kind of pooping all over the place for us, whether it was a gray or a black swan. But your leadership response is critical and requires strategic planning. You cannot gamble with your leadership during a crisis. So here's what you do. You communicate, and communicate some more. You actually begin to connect with compassion. You have the courage to make a courageous commitment to act with a clear conscience. That will enable you to be agile, to be creative and conscious, which will allow the calm even after the storm, and for you to optimize. And you can do all of that when you don't worry and you be strategic. And Ewing, thank you for bringing it all home for us, because once you pivot, do not forget to shift. And HR Authenticity is the program that you will need to compute this new normal. So it's about operations, productivity, and experience. And how do you do that? You have to press the Alt Control Delete buttons. So you alternate the way that you lead people, especially in HR. You control the processes with a people-centric focused, and then you shift the narrative with automated authenticity. And when you do all that, you have a new HR value proposition.
Fantastic. What a great summary as always, Dr. Brown. I don't know how you took all that away. I mean, I'm watching these fantastic speakers, and wow, there are quite a few nuggets there. So if you'd feed your notes to us, and
I will.
We'll add them to the deck that this audience gets post-event, because that is such a terrific summary. I'd like all our speakers to come back on video, please. Those that can stuck around with us, please rejoin us via video, all our speakers. So we can give you a quick shout out here. For the audience, please continue to feed your questions in. We will respond virtually after this session. But for now, just send them in.
I think Jason locked me out.
Me too, Scott.
Me too.
Me too.
He put you on permanent hiatus. He's tricky that way. No, but again, for all of you, this was just so great of you to contribute your time. Again, every one of you is a keynoter. We will distribute the slides with your approval post-event, and this is recorded so people have a chance to show it to their teams. There was one question about something I brought up very early in the session. They saw that fast-moving slide. That's a program called Miro, M-I-R-O. M-I-R-O. It's a virtual way of collaborating with your teams, M-I-R-O. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. We will have another reInvent session in the first quarter. Again, it'll be virtually done, or if we can make it hybrid where we can have a few people in the room, we will do that. But again, thank you all so much for your time today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next ENP event in November and December.